when you're working with somebody that has a prominent position of their portfolio in digital assets, when's the time to start thinking about this stuff and, kind of give us some, I don't want to say guardrails, but
Sure.
just ranges where it starts to make sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with some ranges for the good folks listening, but I want to add some context to that because when you're doing thoughtful, careful planning, there are some other factors that come into play. But in terms of ranges, when you can, and this is tricky because we're talking about somebody looking at their wealth and sort of projecting what it might look like in the future, but when you can, reasonably expect that upon your passing, even if it were to be a little bit premature, that you might be subject to some of this taxation that I just talked about. I mentioned thresholds of 2 million, 5 million. When you look like your worth upon your passing may exceed those amounts, that's when it's time to put the plan in place. Because what happens is when you take these actions, when you push wealth out of your estate, it continues to grow outside of your estate. So that you're nipping it in the bud is a way to think about it, right? Because when you take action when you're just over the threshold and you think you'll just be over the threshold, you're moving small amounts of wealth sometimes out that are then going to grow big. If you wait until you already have the problem, we talked about the lifetime estate tax exemption. That's mirrored by the lifetime gifting exemption, right? Which makes sense. How much you're allowed to push out during your life is the same as the credit they're going to give you if you pass away. So taking action when you're only using small pieces of that exemption can be hugely beneficial versus, well, now I'm over the exemption and I need to move wealth out. Well, now you have to get really creative, and creative planning can be expensive, or you get less creative and you pay the tax. And neither of those are desirable scenarios. So you really want to be on your front foot when it comes to planning. And especially in the digital asset space where the potential for appreciation is rapid. We all know that in the digital asset space, it's far from a certainty, but any morning you could wake up and that could happen. So you have to be even more careful and more thoughtful. And it's even more important to think about this planning before that appreciation happens, just because it becomes a lot more difficult. The other piece of this is I talked about family and loved ones. And if you have people in your life that are dependent on you that you need to care for, this planning is even more important because there are people that are already there that you love and care about that are going to be holding the bag if something happens to you tomorrow.